In April 2022, I went on holiday to Tenerife with my parents and I gained 10 kilos. The reason for this was prior to this holiday, I'd spent 6, 7, 8 weeks dieting where I'd lost loads of weight, only to gain it back during the holiday and more. In this video, I want to share with you why diets suck, why they're so addictive, what you can do instead in order to lose weight sustainably, and finally, if you struggle with diets before and the perfectionistic mindset that comes with it, how you can escape with a special trick that I like to call the mindful, messy day technique. Let's get into it. The first thing that we need to understand is that slow and steady wins. And you might be thinking, nah bro, I want to lose weight fast, because that was what I used to think. But let me just explain why slow is actually fast. So in school, you have two types of students. You have one type of student that studies all year. That was not what I was like. But my friend, his name's Raj, he was like that. And he would study all year, he would just do his homework, he would actually turn up to lessons and listen to teachers, and he would just slowly chip away at things and slowly build his knowledge. And then there was me. At the end, 4 weeks before the exam, I would then open my books and be like, right, I've got to learn all of this in the next 4 weeks. And so I'd do all-nighters, I would go to extra classes, I would try and learn all this content in the 4 weeks. And both of us ended up doing okay. However, when the exam came round, number one, Raj was always better at the exam. He always got slightly better grades than me because he'd been working all year for it, slow and steady. But two, after the exam, he would be way better at retaining the information. Whereas me, I'd just forget it. And if I went to ask Raj right now, maybe some chemistry knowledge from our chemistry class at A levels, I'm sure that he would be able to spiel out way more than me. Now, you can apply this same methodology to weight loss. There's two guys, they both want to go on holiday in summer. One guy, 4 weeks before the holidays, yeah, I'm going to go on a crash diet. The other guy, he spends the whole year building healthy habits, which I'm going to touch on later on in the video, and really trying to integrate health and fitness into his life. Now, yeah, the guy that does a 4-week cut, he might get into decent shape before the holiday, depending what his starting point is. But the guy that's been working on it all year and building these long-term habits, not only is he going to be in better shape for the holiday, but he's going to be able to maintain that shape throughout the holiday because he's not going to feel like he needs to binge because he hasn't restricted so hard. But post the holiday, he's also going to maintain his shape. So next year round, he's never going to have to do anything drastic and he's going to be able to just continually improve. And even though in the short run, it feels like it's slower, in the long run, it's actually faster because you're not having this up, down, up, down, up, down. You're just consistently going down. And then once you hit your goal, you might actually just start to bulk, which is actually where the magic happens. Because if you're consistently going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, you're never actually going to allow yourself the chance to build any muscle. Because in the periods of going down, you're in a calorie deficit and it's a lot more difficult to build muscle when in a calorie deficit. And then when you're bouncing back up, you're bouncing back so quickly in a time where you're on holiday, like me in Tenerife, or various other holidays that I had where you're probably not training, and even if you are, you can't just build muscle in that short space of time by eating so much food, right? And so this is actually way better, and this is what I've done with my client. He works in London, he's a policy manager, he's lost about 15 kilos. And by the way, if you want to work with me to do the same, then click the link in the description. But what he's done is he's lost 15 kilos. Now he's not still in his ideal shape because he had quite a lot of weight to lose. But now what we're doing is we're going through a strength phase. And what we're going to do is slowly build up his calories. And as a result of building up his calories, we're going to build up his metabolism, he's going to build some muscle. And then when he comes down, maybe in a few months' time, he's going to reveal all that hard work, but he's also going to have this period where he's built loads of muscle. And when he's built loads of muscle, he's going to just look even better than the person that's gone up, down, up, down, up, down. And this is what happened with me, where because I was going up, down, up, down, up, down, I actually sacrificed the amount of muscle that I built. And this is why I don't want you to do it. So that is why slow and steady wins, all right? Now, number two, the reason why diets suck also is because if you're coming from a place where you're quite overweight, right, then it's just treating the symptom. So say if you're maybe 100 kilos, 115 kilos, 90 kilos, right? To get you to that point, okay, it's gonna have to take some significant amount of bad habits, overeating. Maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's fast food, maybe it's sweets, maybe it's chocolates, whatever it is, there's been some habits that you've built up that don't serve you, that have caused you to get to the point that you're at. If you now say to yourself, I'm gonna do a short-term diet, I'm gonna lose the weight, have you actually treated the issue that's going on underneath? No, because I'll tell you an example. Imagine you have a bleed in your brain, okay, and it's causing a really bad headache. If you then go and give yourself some paracetamol, yes, the pain might stop for a bit, but eventually that bleed is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Once the paracetamol wears off, that pain is still going to be there. And so in the same regard, even if you still go on a diet and you lose some weight, the reason why you are overeating is because you have been using food or alcohol or something external to change your internal state. And so it's just treating the symptom and not the cause. And so it's not a long-term effort. And so a better approach is to take things a little bit slower, lose weight sustainably, build healthy habits. And whilst you do that, really understand why the hell you were using food as a drug beforehand and fix that as you do it. Because once you do that, you feel happy and you feel full and you never do these drastic things because you feel whole inside. Another reason why diets are dumb is because hunger and response to food cues is higher if you starve yourself. Okay, so imagine you've been dieting for 6 weeks, right? You've been really consistent, you've cut out carbs, you've done ketogenic diet, you've lost loads and loads of weight. And then you go on holiday and you have access to an all-inclusive buffet, ice cream, pizza, chips, all your favorite foods. Because you have abstained from all these foods throughout your dieting period, the response in your brain to food cues, and there's a part in your brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the insular and the anterior cingulate cortex. These are 3 areas in your brain that are in constant conversation, understanding your bodily sensations. And so when you feel hunger, this part of your brain is lighting up. They have done experiments on people in 2016, this guy called Avery, where he looked at people that had abstained from cigarettes for different amounts of time. The people that had abstained longer from cigarettes had higher activation in this area to smoking cues. And so if you abstain from food so much, right, prior to the holiday, prior to the wedding, prior to whatever event that you're dieting for, prior to your deadline, if you're restricting so much, right, this part in your brain is going to be incredibly active when you have access to the cues when you end your diet. And so physiologically, right, you're going to be like, fuck, I want this, right? And it's not even a case of you being able to maintain discipline and willpower because your body is going to be working against you. If you go shopping when you're hungry, you have all these cues around you and you end up coming out with way more than you expected. Whereas if you go when you're full, you end up just buying what you should have bought in the first place. And so that's a practical example. And so what's going to happen is you're going to only have treated the symptom, you're going to be super hungry, and so when you go on holiday, you're going to be like, it's time to go all out. When that happens, you're going to end up gaining back all the weight that you lost. And the thing is with that, I'm going to rub this all off, gaining back the weight you lose is worse than not losing it at all. This is important because there have been so many times where I've just lost weight, gained it back, lost weight, gained it back, lost weight and gained it back. And I want to explain why this creates such a fucked up loop in a minute. But what happens is that you lose weight, success, you get all this external validation, you're like, yay. And then because you've done so really aggressively, you have a binge, okay? And then what follows this binge is guilt, shame, frustration, and these are all very lackful emotions. I don't even know if lackful is a word, but hey, you understand what I'm saying. And what happens here is that this causes stress. This is just stressful. When you're stressed, your heart rate goes up, your respiratory goes up, and you are constantly looking around at your surroundings. You become very materialistic. You're looking at the outside world, you're thinking about all the actions that you can take. And the reason for this is because this stress response comes as a result of a lion coming to attack you. Let me explain that. When hunter-gatherers, so our ancestors thousands of years ago, were roaming around the landscapes, the area, this fight or flight response in their brain would have turned on as a result of some sort of danger in the environment. And that could have been a lion, that could have been some other predators, it could have been maybe a rival tribe. And this response would have allowed them to survive because it would have forced them to switch on, become incredibly present in the environment, and respond accordingly to the threats. And what happens is your prefrontal cortex, so the front of your brain, turns off and your limbic brain turns on. And so your amygdala and your limbic brain is basically sending alarm bells to the rest of the brain to release these hormones, which causes you to basically just like figure out very quickly and very instinctively how to escape the situation. However, in the modern way of life, these things like binging, eating too much food in a very short space of time and feeling guilty and feeling frustrated also causes the exact same response. And so what happens as a result of that stress response is that you have the same mental response where you think everything is a threat. You're trying to predict the worst case scenario. And so just by having the binge and feeling frustrated and feeling guilty, and don't tell me that it's okay to binge, because I used to tell that to myself. I used to say to myself, I was really disciplined beforehand, and I can just bring it back later. But inside I knew that I'd eaten too much food and I felt bad about it. And so I would feel really bad about it. I'd feel stressed. And then as a result of that stress, I would then come back to the period of dieting and be like, yeah, I'm going to be super disciplined. I'm going to lower my calories. I'm going to do loads of cardio. And then the cycle begins again. So this lack would turn into hopeful planning. And then that would turn into another restrictive diet. That cycle would continue over and over again, over and over again. Binge, feeling of lack, hopeful planning, restrictive diet. And we'd just be through this cycle. And every time that this cycle would happen, and this is the kicker, it would become easier and easier to be in this cycle unconsciously. And so I would have this binge and hopefully plan without really realizing it. And then I'd be on this restrictive diet, but I wouldn't even think it's restrictive. I just thought it was normal. And I'm going to explain in a minute why these diets are so addictive as well. But this cycle would just go round and round and round and round. And the thing is, I would never actually lose the weight that I wanted to lose, because I would have a period of dieting where I'd lose some weight, but because I would have the binge, it would just counteract the weight that I would lose. And the other thing is, the other issue is that the more and more that the binges happened, the harder and harder it would become to stay adherent to the restrictive diet, because every time I would just feel this sense of unconscious feeling like, oh, I'm not going to be able to stick to it. I have a problem around food. And this is what happens because we create this neural wiring, this neural circuitry in our brain. Neurons that fire together, wire together, okay? The first time that happens, the second time it happens, the more and more this happens, it's like a pathway in your brain that is basically just being constantly lit up, and your brain becomes easier and easier at lighting this up. If you were to play piano every single day for the next year, by the end of the year, you would be able to play pieces that wouldn't even challenge you. You'd just be able to unconsciously do it, because what happens is at the beginning, you're consciously doing it, right? And then eventually, you unconsciously create this neural circuitry that allows you to take actions without thinking. It's like when you drive a car. It's like when you maybe have done a piece of work where you've done it over and over again and it just becomes something that you can do out of habit. It allows us to conserve energy and opens up our conscious brain for new things, basically new challenges. And once we do this over and over again, it becomes part of our neural circuitry, and actually we create an image of ourselves. And I used to say things like, oh, I have a problem with food. I have no control. And that would become my identity. I can't moderate, okay? And so this is a really big problem with repeatedly dieting and going through this loop over and over again. And that's why it's so important to escape. And the reason why the diets are so addictive is because you do see progress, right? Obviously, if you drop calories down and you do loads of cardio and you train really hard for a few weeks, in that period of time, you do see progress. And so you still have an association between progress and perfection. And we're going to be talking about at the end of this video how you can get out of this perfectionistic mindset. But like this association between restrictive diets and progress is still there. And that's why this loop is so addictive, because we think that the solution to stop binging is restrictive dieting, but it's the exact thing that is causing the binging. So how can we actually get out of this loop of dieting, binging, feeling these sense of lack, hopeful planning, so getting really excited about the next time we're going to be disciplined, and then going back to the restrictive dieting, which causes the binge? If you're in this state, or you haven't started yet, if you haven't ever even tried to lose weight before, then I guess you're lucky, because then you don't have to go through this tool. But the focus at the beginning should not be on diet. And I think the reason why people diet so much is because this culture comes from bodybuilding. And so in bodybuilding, what happens is people will prepare for a competition or a photo shoot, and they'll do a 12-week cut, or they'll do a 16-week cut. And in this period, they become super disciplined. They cut out all the shit. They don't even go out. And they do this all for the prize at the end of basically getting on the stage. And then following this, they'll have a period of gaining. So this is where they build muscle. But imagine you were trying to drive a car. You're learning to drive a car, and you have two options. You can either go into a VW Polo, that's my car at home, and you can learn in that car, and you can drive around the town. You can go to the petrol station, fill up petrol. You can go around roundabouts. You can stop at traffic lights. You can practice parking in a bay. You can practice parallel parking, all the normal things that you do when you're trying to drive. The other option is that you can get into an F1 racing car, go to one of those racetracks and just drive around that 6 times. Now, you might learn how to drive on the racing track, but that's not gonna equip you for real life, right? Because you're just gonna learn how to drive a racing track. You're not gonna be able to learn how to go around roundabouts. You're not gonna be able to learn how to go traffic lights. And so when we diet and we copy these bodybuilders who say, okay, let's just do a 16-week cut, it doesn't really prepare us for normal life. Going around the roundabouts, and the equivalent of that is going out for dinner, maybe going out for your meal, going on holiday, all of these different things. And so we shouldn't take the same approach when it comes to dieting from the bodybuilders, because they do this artificial thing where they basically cut off from the world, they don't go out, they become really disciplined, and they lose loads of weight. And yeah, they are successful for the situation they're in, but like, we want to be able to lose weight and live life at the same time, which is completely possible because we're not trying to get 5% body fat. And that's the thing, these guys are starting from maybe 15%, 12% body fat, getting down to 5, and we're starting from 30, 25% body fat, trying to get to 15. And so you can see here that those two things are incredibly different. And by the way, if you're sitting around 25, 30% body fat and you want to get down to 15%, then I'm your man. Click the link in the description and I'll help you out. Okay, so now we understand that we don't want to take the bodybuilding approach because, quite frankly, a lot of them are quite insecure, and that's why they get into it, because they get so invested in the gym because they're so insecure and they're like, all right, might as well get on stage. But 2, post the shows, a lot of these people have binges as well, right? And there's obviously a downside to the method that they're saying, but they obviously don't show that on social media because they want to paint this pretty picture that everything is hunky-dory, most of them anyway. And so this is why it's so important to be critical of the content that you see and where it's coming from, and see if actually the people that you're taking guidance from are in the exact same situation that you're in. Now, lucky for you, I'm just a normal geese. I used to work a corporate job. I just wanted to get into good shape, and I did take the bodybuilding approach. It didn't work. And so I devised a new approach, which is going to help you lose weight without gaining it back. So the first thing that we need to do is, instead of dieting and following the stupid bodybuilder shit, is focus on changing your identity. And there are 2 types of motivation, okay? We have extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. And I want to explain how this relates to you in a minute. So typically, when we say that we're going to go on a diet to lose weight, that is extrinsic motivation, because the weight loss is outside of us. It's the way that we look in front of other people. It's having that beach body. It's not something internal, right? We're not doing it. We're not doing the actions of going on a diet or going to the gym or doing our steps because we actually enjoy it, but we're just doing it for some exterior motive. But then there's intrinsic motivation, okay? And intrinsic motivation is doing something for the sake of doing it. A good example of this is maybe you have a hobby, maybe you play an instrument, maybe you go out with your friends for dinner. Now, there is no exterior reason for you to go out for dinner with your friends, but you go out for dinner with your friends because it's just fun and you go for the sake of doing it. Now, those who are in shape, those who have the identity of the person that you want to be, eat well and they train consistently and they're pretty active with intrinsic motivation. And so all you need to do is, instead of being extrinsically motivated, you need to just become intrinsically motivated. And I'm going to explain how you can do that now. And it comes from emotional detachment. I don't know if I spelled that right. But if you think about someone that is in shape, right? And that's the identity that we're trying to embody, right? We're trying to get in shape, but we know that diets don't work and we know that we need to change our identity and we need to become intrinsically motivated. Now, when we are emotionally attached to the outcome that we're trying to achieve, and we are saying to ourselves, like, I'm going to be happy when I'm in shape. I'm going to look so good when have a six pack. When I have a six pack, I'm going to be so confident. When we create this emotional attachment, then we create excess importance. And this is where extrinsic motivation happens, because we're saying to ourselves, because I'm going to be happy when I'm in shape, or because I'm going to be confident when I'm in shape, or because I'm going to feel like a boss when I'm in shape. As a result of that, we feel extrinsically motivated to take action. But this also creates excess importance. Because if we delay our happiness until we get a certain goal, then we're going to be so obsessed with getting that goal that we're going to take excess importance on that goal. And as a result of that, we're going to create unbalanced actions. And this is why people go on aggressive diets. This is why people lose weight really quickly. But the thing is with unbalanced actions, because they're unbalanced, right? They always have an opposing force. And Newton says every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And so when we do all this cardio, we train really hard, we lower calories a lot, and we're doing it from an unbalanced place because we're emotionally attached to the outcome and we're putting excess importance because we're extrinsically motivated, what happens is we basically just lose loads of weight, and then when we go on holiday, like I did when we went to Tenerife, we just gain it back. And so what we need to realize is that, I'm gonna rub all this off again, is that we just want the emotional experience of losing weight. So this will be confident, maybe fearless. So we want confidence and fearlessness, right? And we want to walk around like we're a fucking boss. And if weight loss didn't give us that, then we probably wouldn't want weight loss. And so once we realize that we just want this feeling of being confident, this feeling of feeling fearless, maybe this feeling of loving our body as a result of the weight loss, then if we can become emotionally detached from that and actually cultivate these feelings within us and right now, okay, and we can feel confident, we can feel fearless of our health, we can start to love our body, we can start to be grateful, then as a result of that, we're going to become intrinsically motivated. And intrinsic motivation, as a reminder, is basically just doing things for the sake of them. And so instead of trying to force action and trying to basically do things for some exterior motive, it's way better to cultivate this feeling within ourselves of who we want to be, sense of confidence, and I'll explain how you can practically do this in a minute. a sense of confidence, sense of fearlessness, loving our body, feeling grateful for our body. As a result of that, we become intrinsically motivated to eat well and exercise consistently, because that's what all in shape people do for a long enough period of time. And we sustain those actions for long enough without any unbalanced action. And as a result of that, we get the result that we want over time. And so how are we going to actually do this? Number one is that you need to meditate daily. Start with 1 minute and then build up. But what's going to happen is when you meditate, you're going to be following your breath. So your breath is going to go from there to down there to down there, right? So you're going to be breathing in and out. Just basically close your eyes, go in and out. And you can just focus on the breath coming in your nose. And what's going to happen is you're going to have a thought, you might have another thought, you might have another thought, you might have another thought. And eventually you're going to actually spot yourself and you're going to be like, oh fuck, like I was meant to be focusing on my breath. And so then you're going to bring it back. And that is when people usually quit, because they're like, oh, I'm having too many thoughts, I'm having too many thoughts. But the thing is, this is the point of meditation, is because every time that you bring yourself back from having these unconscious thoughts to the conscious breathing is practicing becoming conscious and becoming aware of your consciousness. And as you do that, what's going to happen is some of these thoughts are going to be maybe negative. And as you catch yourself earlier on, so maybe you catch yourself here, maybe you catch yourself here, you can actually, instead of having this thought here, because you're more aware now, because you've practiced taking the unconscious to conscious, you can actually displace this with a positive thought, and you can say to yourself, now, I'm going to say I'm grateful. And I do this all the time, where I'll start having this negative thought spiral about some random thing that my mind has just decided to create. And I'll get to this point and I'll just be like, no, I'm grateful. And instantly, because you're saying you're grateful, then you've put yourself into a positive state. And that is the state of the person that you want to be. And so then you're going to be intrinsically motivated. And later on in the day, when you're looking in the mirror, like I used to say to myself, oh, you're fat or whatever. I used to have these kind of negative self-talk. What meditation has allowed me to do, and this comes with time, but within even 2 weeks of doing it consistently, I guarantee that you'll see benefits. I would basically be able to say to myself like, oh, if I look in the mirror and I say to myself I'm fat, then what kind of signature, emotional signature does it have? And so now I look in the mirror and I consciously say to myself, oh, you're looking good, bro. You're looking good. And so as a result of that, I'm expressing gratitude and love for my body, and I become even more intrinsically motivated to eat well, get in shape, be healthy, be fit. And it doesn't feel like such a strain because I'm not doing it for anything outside of me, okay? The second thing that you want to do is do a 30-day transform protocol. And so commit to 30 days of 1 times exercise every day, 1 times meditate, and clean eating. And you can decide what this actually looks like for you, and this as well. And even the meditation, but you can be free with it, like just to feel like pick things that actually feels right. And so if clean eating includes 3 meals out per week because you think that's acceptable, that's completely fine. And if you think that the exercise can be a walk, it doesn't have to be like a full-on workout, that's completely fine. Like you decide what boundary that you pick for yourself and what you think you're capable of. But just by keeping this commitment to yourself every single day for 30 days, by the end of that 30 days, you're going to have such a good relationship with yourself. And it's the same reason why, say if you went for dinner at the same time with your friend, every single day, 7 p.m, he showed up on time, he was there, he heard you out, he listened to you, he paid for the dinner every single day. By the end of the 30 days, you're going to have way more trust in that person than at the beginning of the 30 days. And so this is basically a protocol so that you build trust with yourself. And every single day that you show up for yourself is another page in your book of evidence that you are someone that shows up for yourself. And that is the power of doing something like this. And so in an ideal world, ask yourself, let's say you were in shape, you were looking really good, what would you want to eat? And if you're struggling with knowing what you think is good and want some guidance on it, then just click the link in the description. But in an ideal world, like what exercise would you do daily? Maybe you strength train 4 times a week and you'll go for a few walks throughout the week, maybe do a bit of running, like it depends what you want. But commit to 30 days because by the end of the 30 days, you're gonna feel like an absolute boss. And that's what we want, right? So this is how, instead of going on a short-term diet, we build the identity of becoming that person that you want to be so that you're not constantly yo-yoing up and down. But finally, I said that if you've struggled with dieting in the past, there was something that you need to do in order to escape this feeling. The thing is, you will still have the desire to be perfect on your diet because there is an association, like I said before, between perfection and progress. Now, I'm going to explain an experiment that was done by this guy called Pavlov, all right? And so Pavlov had a dog. Pavlov had a dog. You might have heard this experiment before. It's very famous in psychology. And Pavlov would give the dog lunch at 12 p.m. every day. And the dog would salivate in response to the lunch. Now, one day Pavlov was like, I want to do an experiment. And so he rung the bell. Now, what happened was the dog didn't salivate, so no salivation. But then he did bell plus lunch at the exact same time. And then the dog salivated in response to the lunch as usual. But the next day he did the bell and he gave no lunch. And what he found was the dog salivated. So what you can see here is that we have a stimulus in the bell, right? The exact same stimulus. And what he's done is conditioned a response of salivation to the bell by pairing it with the lunch, which is what he already salivated with. And this is inherently how humans work in general, is that we create associations between one thing and another, and this gets ingrained in our brains, okay? And so an example of this when you were dieting is that maybe when you first started dieting, you lost loads of weight, and that method of dieting gave you lots of progress, lots of external validation. Like I remember in 2021, my brother was preparing for a photo shoot, and during that time I became super disciplined. I think I'd just left the job, I was feeling a little bit lost, I turned to the gym, I became really consistent. I think it was just after COVID times as well, and so the gyms were opening up, and so I was able to like really get into it, and so I lost like crazy amount of weight. I made loads of progress, and I got loads of external validation. And so that regimented approach, I associated it with like good feelings, right? Because I was getting compliments from people, I was seeing the scale go down, like all of this positive reinforcement happened as a result of me being super regimented. And so that association occurred. And so it's taken me so long to realize that I then associated being perfect with progress at the same time. And so any time that I wasn't perfect, I felt like I was failing, and I had to rewire that. And so that is something that you're going to have to go down if you have felt like you've been super regimented in the past, and that's what's given you the external validation, because that is going to be something that has been ingrained in you and conditioned in you, just like Pavlov got conditioned with the bell. Is that if you are saying to yourself like, yeah, I need to be super disciplined for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to lose loads of weight, like all these thoughts are happening, you're planning for the future, then we need to find a way for you to basically practice imperfection. And this is why I like, when you're on this journey, to do a 3M day. It's called Mindful, Messy, Meal Day. The reason why this is so powerful, firstly, it's mindful. So what you're going to do on this day is you're going to make it unplanned. You're not going to really track your calories. You're just going to eat what you want. But you're going to do it in a mindful way. And what I mean by mindful is, I'll probably do another video on it at some point, but basically being really aware of, and if you've been doing your meditation, this is going to help, but being really aware of how you're feeling before you eat, during you eat, and after you eat. So your hunger signals, before, during, and after, so that you're becoming aware of whether you're eating for physical hunger or there's maybe something else going on. But you're going to eat really slowly. You're going to chew your food, you're going to taste it, you're going to even tell yourself how these foods are tasting, you're going to be grateful for it, you're going to practice all these mindful eating habits. But it's messy because it's unplanned. And so you might go out for a meal, you might go for a slice of pizza, you might even have a beer, depending on what your opinion is on alcohol. But the point here is that you're going to be really mindful about it, so you're not going to overeat, you're going to be grateful, you're going to appreciate having all these foods, but it's going to be unplanned, it's going to be messy. And as a result of doing these two things, maybe once per week, you're going to be able to uncondition the desire to be perfect, because you're going to realize that by doing this protocol, you're going to end up being able to make the exact same amount of progress than if you're regimented. And what that means is that when you go on holiday, when you go out for a meal in the future, when you maybe even go off plan by accident, you're going to be prepared, because you're not going to feel like a failure even though these situations have occurred and you haven't been able to be 100% regimented. And what it's going to show you is that you can not have 100% accuracy all the time, but still make lots and lots of progress. And as a result of that, you're going to be able to continue and sustain yourself on this journey and continue to make lots and lots of progress without having this all or nothing mindset of being on track, feeling like you failed, and then going off track, binging, and then having that cycle go over and over again. If you like this video, then check out this video here. YouTube thinks that you might like it. Other than that, remember, you are the person that you want to be. Peace.